Welcome to the Deep Dive podcast channel. Have you ever been told your pain is maybe just stress, or heard something like, well, nothing shows up on the scan, so it must be in your head?
Hmm. It's incredibly common, unfortunately.
Right. Well, today we're diving into the surprising reality that pain is actually far more complex than just a simple signal from an injury.
Exactly. Science is really opening up this empowering new understanding. It shows how our brains, our bodies, and even our emotions are deeply, deeply intertwined in how we experience pain.
It feels like a huge shift from the old way of thinking.
It absolutely is. That traditional view, pain is just a straightforward message traveling from damaged tissue up to the brain. That's really evolving.
Right.
What the research strongly suggests now is that pain is, well, it's more like an interpretation. A
Yeah.
protective response that the brain creates. It's a much more active process.
An interpretation. Okay, so if it's not just a direct line from, say, a cut finger, what exactly is the brain considering when it generates this feeling? Because it's so easy to dismiss pain when there's no obvious physical cause, but you're saying it's still very real.
Absolutely real.
Okay.
100%. Think of your brain maybe as this incredibly sophisticated information processor.
Right.
Like it's constantly getting input from all over your body, not just nerve endings, but also signals from your immune system. Immune cells can release chemicals that actually make nerves more sensitive.
Ah, I see.
And here's where it gets even more interesting. Your brain also weighs up your past experiences, especially any history of trauma or significant emotional events. That gets factored in.
Wow.
And even your immediate environment. Things like your current stress levels, whether you feel safe or connected, noise, social isolation, all of that plays a crucial role in how your brain interprets the incoming signals and decides, essentially, whether to produce pain as a protective measure.
So it's like this whole complex calculation happening.
Exactly. It's a holistic assessment, really, which is why even unexplained pain is completely real.
Yeah.
It's constructed by this whole process.
That's fascinating. It almost sounds like the brain can sometimes, cry wolf, even if there isn't immediate tissue damage. Is that a fair way to think about it?
That's a very apt analogy, actually. Yeah. Sometimes the system becomes overly protective based on all that information is processed.
And you mentioned different brain regions earlier. Can you tell us a bit more about how specific areas like the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex get involved in this whole pain experience?
Yes, definitely. Specific brain areas are absolutely key players. So the amygdala, that's often called our brain's emotional center, particularly involved in fear and threat detection.
Right, the fear center.
Exactly. In chronic pain, the amygdala can become highly sensitized, kind of hyperactive.
Okay.
So a really key insight here is that chronic pain can sort of hijack our fear response. It makes even mild physical sensations feel potentially threatening.
Ah, okay, that makes sense.
And then at the same time, you have the prefrontal cortex. That's the part of our brain responsible for things like focus, decision-making, evaluating situations, our thinking brain.
Mm-hmm.
It tries to evaluate the pain signals. But when it's overwhelmed by persistent pain or the anxiety that often comes with it, it can actually start to misinterpret signals. Normal, harmless body signals might get flagged as dangerous.
So it amplifies the problem.
It can, yeah. It creates this kind of feedback loop. Pain triggers fear in the amygdala,
Mm-hmm.
and that fear response can make the prefrontal cortex interpret things as more dangerous, which then, intensifies the pain experience. It feeds itself.
Wow. Okay, that loop sounds really difficult to break. It makes me think of something we hear about central sensitization. People sometimes describe it like a pain volume knob that's stuck on high.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
What's actually happening in the body and the nervous system when that occurs?
Well, central sensitization refers to this state where the entire central nervous system, so the brain and the spinal cord, becomes hyper-responsive. It's like the gain is turned up on pain signals.
Okay.
The threshold for what actually triggers a pain signal gets lowered, significantly lowered sometimes. So things that normally wouldn't be painful at all, maybe just a light touch or pressure, can suddenly become quite uncomfortable, even painful.
And what causes that? Is it just injury?
It can be triggered by ongoing issues like repetitive injury or chronic inflammation, sure. But, and this is crucial, it can also be driven by things like significant trauma, prolonged stress or anxiety, even disruptions in sleep or immune function. All these things can contribute to the nervous system becoming essentially overprotective.
It's really important to stress, isn't it, that this doesn't mean the pain is imaginary or made up.
Absolutely not. It's vital. The pain is real. The mechanism has changed. The system itself has adapted, often in an unhelpful way, to become overprotective.
This really clarifies that link between stress and pain flare-ups. I mean, personally, and I'm sure many people listening can relate, stress just seems to crank up the volume on existing pain.
Hmm. Very common experience.
How does something like Dr. Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory help us understand that connection?
The polyvagal theory offers a really valuable lens here. At its core is the idea of neuroception.
Neuroception.
Yeah, it's our body's automatic, kind of unconscious way of scanning our environment, internal and external, to figure out if we're safe or if there's danger.
Okay, like a constant background check.
Exactly. And this assessment heavily influences how we experience sensations, including pain. It does this largely via the vagus nerve, which is this major nerve connecting the brain to many of our organs, playing a huge role in regulating our physiological state.
Right.
So when our neurosections signal safety, our nervous system supports states of calm, connection, social engagement. But when it detects threat, real or perceived, our body shifts into defense modes.
Fight or flight.
Fight or flight is one, yes. And in that state, pain sensitivity can actually increase, almost like we're bracing for potential injury. Or we might go into a shutdown or freeze response, which can sometimes involve feeling numb or dissociated, but can also paradoxically be linked to certain types of chronic pain.
So those pain flare-ups during stressful times, it's literally the body going into defense mode.
That's a very good way to understand it. The body is signaling danger or threat, even if there's no new physical harm. The perception of threat is enough to change our pain experience.
That makes the impact of trauma we talked about even clearer. You mentioned how past trauma can make someone more prone to chronic pain. It's like the body is, I don't know, holding on to those experiences.
It really can feel that way. Trauma, whether it's physical, emotional, relational, can have a really lasting impact on the nervous system. It often leaves it in a state of hypervigilance.
Constantly scanning for danger.
Exactly. Always on the lookout for potential threats. And in that heightened state, the threshold for perceiving any kind of danger, including interpreting body signals as pain, is just lower. The nervous system becomes more easily activated, more reactive.
So the body remembers.
In a sense, yes. The body seems to store these experiences, and sometimes pain can become almost like a language it uses when it doesn't feel safe, when those old threat responses get triggered.
Is that why we see links with certain conditions?
It's certainly a major contributing factor. We often see a higher incidence of chronic pain conditions, things like fibromyalgia, chronic pelvic pain, tension headaches, even complex regional pain syndrome in individuals who have a history of trauma. It's not that they are the trauma, but these conditions can be understood, in part, as the body's way of expressing these unresolved, stored experiences.
It's so important to acknowledge the power of our minds, our beliefs, our experiences in all this, which brings us to things like the placebo and nocebo effects.
Yes. Fascinating area.
It's clearly more than just, thinking positively or negatively, isn't it?
Oh, much more. The placebo effect, where belief in a treatment can actually lead to real physiological changes in pain relief, shows us just how powerful expectation and belief are.
Mm-hmm.
But conversely, the nocebo effect, where negative expectations, fear, or anxiety about a treatment or condition can actually worsen symptoms or create them, illustrates the very same principle, just in reverse.
And these aren't just psychological tricks.
Not at all. These effects involve real, measurable changes in brain chemistry. They influence neurotransmitters like dopamine, which is linked to reward and motivation, endorphins, our body's natural pain relievers, and oxytocin, which is associated with feelings of safety, bonding, and trust.
Wow.
So understanding this, that actually gives us some agency back, doesn't it? It highlights our potential to influence our own healing process by actively cultivating informed trust, hope, and a sense of safety.
Which is really empowering. And, for our listeners who might be thinking about this, if you're finding this conversation helpful, maybe consider subscribing to the channel. We do these deep dives regularly.
Yeah, maybe leave a comment too. Share your own experiences or questions. It helps us know what resonates.
Definitely. Okay, so back to the brain. If tissues can heal, a cat heals, a bone mends, why does chronic pain sometimes stick around long after the initial injury should be gone? You mentioned the brain remembering pain, these neural loops.
Right. This really gets into neuroplasticity.
The brain's ability to change.
Exactly. The brain's remarkable ability to reorganize itself, to form new connections and pathways based on experience. When pain signals are sent repeatedly over time, they can carve out these really well-established neural pathways, like a path in a forest getting deeper with repeated use. So even after the initial injury has fully healed at the tissue level, The brain can continue to predict and generate the sensation of pain based on these learned patterns. It's almost like the brain has learned to anticipate pain in certain situations or with certain movements, and that very anticipation can trigger the sensation itself.
So the prediction becomes the reality.
In a way, yes, the prediction strongly influences the perception. And again, this isn't a sign of weakness or making it up. It's actually a demonstration of the brain's incredible efficiency and ability to learn.
But the hopeful part is that neuroplasticity goes both ways.
Absolutely. That's the crucial message. Just as those pain pathways were formed, we can create new, healthier, non-pain pathways through consistent effort, through new experiences. It is reversible.
This is all incredibly helpful to understand the why. So let's shift a bit towards the what now. For people listening who are living with persistent pain, maybe feeling disconnected from or even angry at their bodies, what are some practical, maybe gentler, trauma-informed ways they can start to, well, rebuild trust? It sounds like just pushing through isn't the answer.
Definitely not just pushing through. A trauma-informed approach always prioritizes creating a sense of safety first and then fostering a kinder, more curious relationship with your body.
Okay, so what might that look like?
Well, one practice is something called somatic tracking. This involves gently, mindfully observing the physical sensations of pain without judgment or panic, just noticing. Where is it? Does it move? What are the actual qualities? Tingling, pressure, heat, cold? Just observe.
Taking the fear out of it a bit.
Exactly, reducing the threat value. Education itself, like what we're doing now, can be incredibly reassuring. Understanding the neuroscience, knowing it's not tissue damage necessarily, can dial down the fear. Then there are grounding and specific polyvagal exercises. These are often very simple things. Humming, gentle rocking, slow, deep breathing, where the exhale is longer than the inhale, even just placing a hand on your chest or belly. These can help regulate the vagus nerve and actively signal safety to the nervous system.
Things you can do anywhere.
Pretty much. And movement, but approached differently. Gentle, mindful movement. Exploring movement with curiosity rather than pushing into pain. Think very light yoga, gentle stretching, mindful walking, just noticing sensations.
Can support.
Crucial, absolutely crucial. Healing often happens in relationship, connecting with skilled trauma-informed therapists, finding supportive groups, maybe working with bodywork practitioners who understand this approach. That connection and validation can be incredibly powerful in reducing the isolation that so often comes with chronic pain.
That's a really hopeful list of possibilities. It sounds like it's about working with the body, not against it.
Precisely. Listening to it, learning its language, offering it safety.
This has been so insightful. Let's maybe tackle some specific questions we often hear. First one. Is my chronic pain real if the doctors can't find anything wrong on scans or tests?
Yes. Emphatically yes. As we've discussed, chronic pain very often stems from changes in how the nervous system processes information, this central sensitization, not necessarily ongoing damage that shows up on an MRI. Normal scans do not mean your pain isn't real.
Okay. Next, how exactly does past trauma make current pain worse?
Trauma can essentially prime the nervous system to be in a state of high alert, a threat mode. This makes it much more sensitive to potential danger signals, including signals that get interpreted as pain. It can also disrupt the body's own natural pain relief systems.
And the big one, can this pain actually be unlearned? It feels so permanent sometimes.
Yes, it really can. Through neuroplasticity, the brain can rewire itself. By consistently engaging in practices that create safety, by learning about pain, by having new, safe experiences, movement, sensation, connection, those persistent pain patterns can gradually be overwritten by new, healthier neural pathways. It takes time and practice, but it's possible.
Okay. Another common one. Why does my pain always seem to flare up when I'm stressed or scared?
Because stress and fear directly activate the body's threat response system, the sympathetic nervous system, the HPA axis.
Right.
This whole cascade shifts the body into a state ready for danger, and part of that readiness involves increasing sensitivity, including pain sensitivity, as a protective measure. Your body's trying to alert you.
Makes sense. Are there effective ways to manage chronic pain that aren't just medication or procedures?
Absolutely. Many. The kinds of things we've been talking about. Somatic practices like tracking, mindfulness, targeted polyvagal exercises, therapy, especially trauma-informed approaches like EMDR or somatic experiencing, gentle movement, improving sleep, managing stress. These can all be incredibly effective in regulating the nervous system and reducing pain over time.
Okay, and finally, Is it okay to feel really frustrated, angry, or even hopeless about my pain? It can be such a long road.
Oh, completely okay. More than okay. It's entirely valid and understandable. Living with chronic pain is incredibly challenging. Acknowledging those difficult feelings without judgment is important. And please, seek support. You don't have to carry that frustration alone. Remember, healing isn't linear, but it is possible.
That's so important to hear. This has been such a rich and I think really important deep dive into the complexities of pain. It feels truly empowering to understand it's this multifaceted experience involving our whole selves. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise today.
It's genuinely been my pleasure. It's just so important for people experiencing this to know they're not alone, they're not making it up, and that there really is hope for developing a different, less frightening relationship with their pain and their bodies.
Well, thank you again, and thank you, our listeners, for joining us for this deep dive. We really hope this conversation has offered you some valuable insights, maybe a new perspective, and definitely a sense of possibility. As we mentioned, if you found this helpful, do consider subscribing for more explorations like this one. And we genuinely value hearing from you, so please feel free to share your experiences or questions in the comments below. And just to reiterate that closing thought, remember, you are not broken. Your body isn't the enemy. And building a more trusting, understanding relationship with it is a really powerful step towards healing.
Indeed. Approaching your body, even the parts that hurt, with curiosity and compassion rather than fear, that
Yeah.
can really be a game changer over time.
A wonderful thought to leave our listeners with. Until our next deep dive, take good care.